All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 2024, June 25th meeting. Thank you very much. I just came off the road, and I was expressing to Dave what a drive it was coming from Northern Virginia to here to get to this meeting in time, and it was quite draining. Let's put it that way. But thank you very much. I appreciate you all coming, and we have an important agenda tonight. My name is Al LaGroix. I'm the chair of the Comprehensive Plan Task Force. I'd like to just go around starting with this handsome man on my left here. And Dave Brown.
George Prince.
Matt Gillian.
Kevin Johnson.
Amy Heibel.
Bob Eaton.
Brian Hurst.
Phil Taylor.
Thank you very much. And Peter Lieberworth is on travel. And just for everybody's information, Julie Moulton has decided to retire from the board. She has a lot of other things going on, and she felt like she couldn't devote enough time to the board, so she's retired, and we'll take a look at whether we need somebody in the time remaining to tap into the Harpswell Aging at Home part of the equation. But right now, this is the board. So the agenda that was set out has a couple of important items on it. First, last month we started with a definition of rural character, and Amy has provided some comments on that particular aspect. And I'd like to start the meeting with a continuation of the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago about rural character and how we're going to implement that or incorporate it into the comprehensive plan. And I'd like Amy, if you would just kind of summarize your thoughts at this time.
Yep. I resent out the suggestions that I had based on our conversation. I put together a description of what is Harpswell's rural character, and I got some comments back, some feedback back on that, nothing really substantial. And then I sent a brief email out about how I thought we might put preservation of rural character back into the comprehensive plan, and I hope that folks got a chance to take a look at that. The first thing that I thought was in the picture, I don't know if I can find it here, but in the word picture that we did for this plan, I would take a look at, instead of putting the word rural, put the word rural character into the picture. I'm sorry, it's not right at my fingertips. It's the word rural in the image is pretty small as well. There are a lot of other words that are larger than that, and I think based on the conversations that we got from our feedback at our meetings, that we ought to make that word a little bit bigger. That's really simple and doesn't really have a whole lot of meaning. It just puts the words in there. Cherishing our rural roots. The vision statement mentions only rural roots. This is B on my, I'm sorry. It's all right. This is B on my email. It says we cherish our rural roots, but cherishing our rural roots doesn't have the same weight as protecting rural character. So you can cherish your rural roots all you want, but unless you protect them, you won't have them very long. And then I also think we should add something to the vision statement that says further development should be regulated in a manner that protects Harpswell's rural character. And we could put an asterisk at the end of that statement that points to our definition of rural character at the bottom of the page. And that way we get the definition in there, but it's also matched with something that says protect the rural character. And then the vision elements, the specific vision elements that Dave mentioned, don't really mention rural character except as it pertains to growth in housing. And this is the 6th point in a list of 8. And I know that we talked about how these points are all equally weighted, but I think that this does make a difference. And so I would rewrite it to say something like, enhancing our sense of community by preserving our rural character, our diversity and inclusion, et cetera, et cetera. So I put those in writing. I just want to add one simple note here. In talking about rural character, I just did it like a back of the envelope calculation, and there's a lot of things that you could find wrong in this calculation, but I just want to put this out there. There are 15,700 acres in Harpswell. And just for giggles, I said, okay, let's say that only 65% of that is actually developable. So that gives you 10,205 acres. If each one of those is developed at half an acre, you'll have 20,410 lots. If you have this is conservative, 3 people living on each one of those lots, you would have a population of 61,230 people. That would really change our rural character. And so I ask that we just look at that and think about what that means. Now, that would not happen. You could say, Amy, why are you worried about that? That won't happen in our lifetime. Probably not. But aren't we supposed to be thinking about future generations and what we really want the town to be like? That's part of what we're doing. And we also, I think, need to think about if we really want to protect our rural character, then we really need to take these numbers into consideration and think about them. You could say, Amy, that will never happen in your lifetime, but it might happen in your kids' or your grandkids' lifetime, because the pressure from Brunswick is ongoing and it's not going to stop. So just want to throw that out there.
Comments? Dave?
Amy, to talk about the word cloud for a minute, are you familiar with how that got created?
Yes.
So, software is used to process all the comments in the early vision sessions, the ones in the survey that came afterwards and after the sessions. So the size of the words reflects the number of people who referred, for instance, to community. To change the size of rural would be implying that there were a lot more people who said rural than there were. I think that is misrepresenting the data, so I'm concerned about it.
I understand that, and that's a valid point. However, I also think that we need to take a look at the feedback that we've gotten from presenting this plan to the public and actually having the rubber hit the road. And I don't think that those numbers should hold us back. I think we should take the comments that we've gotten and maybe even ask people again. I mean, I'm happy to ask people again. Is this word salad really what you think, how it should be weighted, or do you think it should be different? Because part of the thing that we said that we would do is take comments and then change the plan, alter the plan, augment it, enhance it, whatever, based on comments. And if we're going to hold that data to the original meetings and say that it's immovable, then I don't think the plan is going to.
I think you'd have to say it represents where people were when we had
Yes.
those meetings.
Yes, maybe so.
We could put a footnote in saying we've changed the rural
We can
size
ask- we
because
can ask
Amy
again.
thinks it's important.
We could ask again.
I'm not sure. I keep thinking as we are making this change, two of the larger parts of the word cloud, one of it was having a place for people to live in this town. I get the sense by putting too much emphasis on rural character, you're sending the message of we're trying to stop development. And I don't know that we can, when we say we can stop it, I mean, just to have a vibrant community, you have to be able to have more development. We'd like to see it in a nature that is comfortable for the people working here, and not to jump ahead, but talking about the size of lots has something to do with it. We go back to the 2-acre subdivision, even in the old plan, states that that was a way to stop development because people did not want more development. It's also not the best way to have the people who are living here being able to continue to live here and have places for their children to develop.
It's up to the task force. I'm just, I'm just doing what I said I would do, so.
Yeah, no,
It's up to the
and I
task
think it was good because it allowed me to think more thoroughly about all the words in the word cloud.
Yep.
Yeah, we should dispense with this word cloud thing. The word cloud is understood by those who understand it to be a statistical counting of words in a document. For us to then go and tweak that and change it because we think some words, that's just dishonest, frankly. It's just dishonest. So the only thing I'd be very happy to do, and it might produce a different word cloud, is the one time I tried it, you have to identify the words you want counted. And it's not clear that somebody said, I want to see rural character counted. So if you want to go back and rerun the word cloud software to see if you get a result you like better, I don't have a problem, but not tweaking with the software itself. That's just, we can't be doing that. And I think we should just move on to a much more substantive discussion in terms of what you got
That's,
there.
yeah, that's fine. I would not advocate being dishonest about anything. That's why I suggested ask again, because we're not finished, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fine. Run it again and make sure that rural character is identified as one of the things you're monitoring. That's fine, but just let the software speak and don't tweak it.
Running it again means having all those meetings again.
Hmm?
I thought we were suggesting we have a series of meetings to talk about the vision for the future of Harpswell, so we might get different numbers here. Running the software again isn't going to change
no,
this.
no.
Well, then let's just move on. We should not, I think the bedrock position is, and I think you agree with me, we do not want to represent a word cloud as something that it isn't.
Absolutely not. And I was just looking at ways that we could make rural character stand out more in the comp plan, and that was the suggestion that I had. And, if you don't want to have more meetings, you don't want to revisit the issue, it's up to the task force.
Are we gonna have more public meetings that lend itself to this, a discussion of that?
The kinds of meetings that I was envisioning in the future would be bringing what we decided to change, if anything, in the plan forward to say, is this closer to what you think as a community you agree with? Now, the interesting thing about this, as Dave points out, this cloud that we're talking about was done early in the process. And so we have that data point based on the people that participated at that particular time. The meetings that we've had subsequent to that have slightly changed some of those perceptions. But that word cloud that was represented here is what the community at that time came forward to us and said, this is what we think is important. So I think what we're getting at is that the more we talk to different people in different parts of the community, things get a bit more nuanced and slightly changed and so on. I don't think we're ever going to come up with a word cloud, if you will, that's going to encapsulate everybody in the town. I think what we have to tried to determine basically is if we think rural character, as Amy has talked about, is worth incorporating in the document in a bit more visible and stronger way. And, you know, there are people, I've done some reading on this business about character, rural character or whatever. And there are a lot of people that would go out and say, you guys are smoking something, to talk about character and so on and so forth, because what you're basically saying is that by doing this, you're excluding a large part of the population if you say this is our character and so on. And so I think we have to think about and be very careful about, if we want to put rural character in, to make sure that we're not being exclusionary, if you will, in terms of the town and the people that come into the town.
Two things. I think, just based on your suggestions, Amy, that you sent in the email, I like letter C, I guess, adding it into the vision statement, you know, under that 6 point, you know, rewriting it the way, kind of something similar to what you've written, because I think that really gets across the point of rural character in the vision statement where we want it, which is housing, you know, where if we have, like you said earlier, if we get a bunch of houses, it takes away from the rural character. So that puts it right in the forefront of people's minds when they're thinking about housing. And to what your point, Al, I mean, this is rural. There's no dot compact line there. I mean, this isn't a highly developed area, and I don't think it ever will be, just because of the lack of water and sewer. So I don't think we're really excluding anyone as much as just calling the kettle black, you know? I mean, that's what this place is. That's why people come here. I think it's because it is rural, you know? We get a ton of people that move here from cities and urbanized areas because they don't like that.
If I remember correctly, the ending of the '05 town plan says that the plan wanted Harpswell to stay pretty much as it was at that time, which is, you can argue, I think, that we're pretty much like that now. We have a few more subdivisions and things, and, you know, houses torn down and rebuilt. But that was what they wanted. I don't know if they asked that question prior to, you know, writing that final thing. I feel like Matt said, a lot of people come here, you know, for that, for the ocean views. And, you know, for us to put it in somewhere in the town plan makes a lot of sense, I think.
Anyone else? Comments?
I have some other comments too.
Okay.
I really am not just talking about, you know, writing a sentence that says rural character and calling it quits and saying we've done our job. I think we need to have some strategies in the future land use plan about how to protect rural character. And I have to say, if we don't, from what I'm hearing, if we don't do that, this plan's not gonna pass. And so I think we need to spend some time and do some more research on really looking at policies that other communities have used that protect rural character. I think we really need to do that. And it should be part of the future land use plan. I think that's integral to, at least from what I have heard and what I'm still hearing, it's integral to.
Okay, last meeting
Acceptance.
we attempted to try to define rural character. I think we talked about a number of things. Can
Yep.
you encapsulate what you think you heard at the last meeting about rural character?
Yeah, it's in what I sent out.
Okay.
It's, For those born and raised in Harpswell, the rural character of the town is simply the town I grew up in. For many of the rest of us, it is a place dominated by long stretches of woods and fields that separate our small village areas connected by rural roads with no traffic lights. Harpswell's rural character means quiet neighborhoods where people of all ages live and work together in a setting that supports the natural ecosystem of open space and working waterfront. Harpswell's rural character means we're able to know and support each other with a strong tradition of volunteerism and neighbor helping neighbor, whether that be a chainsaw party after big storms or sharing food and comfort with those in need. Other attributes of Harpswell's rural character are its quietness and slower pace of life, its dark night skies, its unique geography and lack of building conformity, and the fact that homeowners can store their fishing gear and other work machinery in their yards without complaints from neighbors.
That sounds more like a Chamber of Commerce than it does anything else.
Then change it. I mean, I sent it out and I asked for feedback, so, and now's the time for feedback too. I mean, it's not a problem for feedback, but I think rural character has two things. It has functionality and visual quality. So it's how the landscape functions, working waterfront, working landscape, farms and fields, but it's also perception, it's visual. It's open fields, punctuated by woodlands, more open fields. Lack of heavy traffic, all of those things. So it's function and visual.
I guess my question is, I think it sounds great. It sounds like motherhood and apple pie. However, what does that do to the plan as we talk about future land use? What are we saying about future land use?
Yeah.
So, well, I think it sounds great. I'm trying to figure out how that meshes with when we start figuring out how to develop for more land.
This is what I'm asking us to sink our teeth into. I have my ideas that I have lots of ideas about that. One of them is the requirement, it's actually in the plan, the requirement for clustering in subdivisions. Like not even making it an option, requiring that you cluster. It would be requiring, and this is why the future land use plan is so important, and the policies. You could require that open space be contiguous in development if it's possible. It would require, I don't know, I can think of other things. I'm not good at reeling them off the top of my head right now. But it would mean sinking our teeth into really wanting to protect the rural character and thinking of ways to do that. And it's important to me to do that. If it's not important to the task force, then I just have to accept that. I think it is important to some task force members, but if the task force as a whole doesn't think it's important, then move on. You know, do what you need to do. Otherwise, I would say we need to sink our teeth into it and start really working on it.
Dave?
I think it's important for us to set a vision that guides the explicit development of further policies, and I think it would be crazy for us to start saying, all right, there will be no more traffic lights in town. That's a level of specificity that may fit with your conception of rural character, but I think it's too detailed for us to get into.
Yeah. I'm so sorry if I'm making it sound that way. What I'm trying to do is describe what rural character is, and then the policies, which would be much more general, would be the way that you try to make those policies come to fruition, or make those visions come to fruition.
So,
But
I
to
don't know
say
if
in the
it's-
plan that there would be no more traffic lights, I hope you're not suggesting that's what I'm saying, because I'm not.
Well, I wonder if you could articulate a definition of rural character that's like a sentence rather than 3 paragraphs. Because 3 paragraphs is very hard for me to get my head around.
Rural character is visual and functional. One sentence. Visually, open space, fields, farmland, forest, working waterfront. There you go. 2 sentences. That's basically what we have now.
Say the functional part again?
It's functional and visual. So,
No, but I think we need to say something about what the function is.
well,
Say it's functional and visual is
okay.
very, very abstract.
Well, you asked me for 2 sentences,
Yeah.
so I gave it to you. I'm happy to work on doing a better job of it.
I think, look, whatever the statement is and however it's written, this town is going to develop as it's going to develop. And whatever we do will have some marginal input on that. But let's not get too excited about what this plan is going to do. And I'm not concerned about my grandchildren in terms of trying to tell them what I think, where they ought to live and how they should live. I trust succeeding generations to wrestle with these questions and come up with good answers. I think this is a good statement. I think you're right, there's kind of a Chamber of Commerce aspect to it. I suggest we put it in a forward. I don't want to just sort of shoehorn it into the vision statement we have, because I think it dilutes the vision statement, which we have tried to keep short and to the point. So I would put this in the things, because the real question is not where this thing goes. Now, and I say put it in the forward, I'm doing that as an editor and as a graphic artist. It's just, that's where it ought to be, fine. Because at the end of the day, we should be talking about land use policy, we should be talking about other things, and there's where we can talk in real terms about rural character. By the way, I don't think of Harpswell as having rural character. I mean, South Central Wisconsin has rural character. I mean, when I go out on Orr and Bailey's Island and I see these little shoehorned houses, cheek to jowl with each other, that's not rural to me. But it's in the eye of a beholder, it's fine. So I say, put the thing into the forward. We might want to tweak, but please don't make a current vision statement much wordier than it is now and stuff. And let's move on and really talk about policies that really will in fact affect it, as opposed to a statement that we came up with. I think we should register it. We agreed to this statement pretty much last meeting. Let's not keep regurgitating this thing. Let's move on.
Okay. That's not a bad suggestion in terms of, but I think what it accomplishes is it draws attention to the fact that we looked at it, we considered it, it's part of our deliberations, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we make it the feature element of this plan, although it will impact land
Sure.
use. Let's work on coming up with something that we can put in up front, the executive summary, and make sure that that's highlighted. You know, when you look at the vision statement and all the elements of it, bits and pieces of what we've talked about here are already in there. It doesn't say rural character as one of these vision statements, but bits and pieces of what Amy has articulated you can find in the vision statements as you look at it in totality. Which brings me to the next item, and that is land use. I think, editorial comment, I think one of the most important things we need to do in the next several months is just completely focus on land use. And because that's going to address a lot of the research, lots of the specific parts of the plan that have been put together, as well as some of the concerns that we've heard from the community in the last several months. We need to nail down the future land use plan, and I think we need to focus on that, in the next several months before we roll this out for final improvement. So, as you all know, the big debate is over housing affordable housing, attainable housing, whatever you want to call it, and the recommendations of the Affordable Housing Working Group, how that will impact future land use. We've come up with an initial plan that was not well received in terms of using town-owned land to do some small cluster housing, in terms of marking out specific areas, districts, as we call it, for specific purposes. And the question is there a way to accommodate both the concerns that some people have about being able to live here in modest surroundings, modest housing, with, I guess, the ability to satisfy concerns that people have about overdevelopment and things like that. So I'd open up the floor to discussion about what changes do you think we have to make to the future land use plan that we initially put forward in this document? How can we make that more palatable to the community? What changes do we have to make?
I think part of the problem with the last is we chose specific areas in town. Pull apart and say, this is where we want to do this. When you look at Harpswell, my section is the whole interior is available to be developed if it's not already. If we were to continue to think about that whole area as a whole, I'm wondering if it would be less threatening to people. And it's kind of how the town historically has developed. You had someone with a large farm, they broke off a little bit here, and you had a small house there. If you drive around town, it is sort of, the whole area is mixed. I'm wondering if we kind of directed ourselves in that direction, if that would not be more agreeable, and if it's just not more doable.
Comments, folks? I mean, I think anytime you mark off a specific area on a map,
Oh, yeah.
it's going to draw attention. But the reason that was done initially was because
Yeah.
both the consultant and the town planner recommended that the more specific you can be about these things, the better off you are in the long run, and the more acceptable a plan would be to the state as they review these plans. So that's one of the reasons that they pushed hard in that direction. But we also said, if you recall, that growth in Harpswell, we think, needs to be not specifically identified in one particular area, but potentially in all parts of the town. So, and that would require, I think, a specific statement that the state would buy off on, that say we're not identifying specific areas, but we think that growth should occur sort of uniformly throughout the town, because that best fits what we think would work for us.
And last I heard, Judy even said she thought that was a.
Yeah, because of
they
a
could make
variety
that
of specific
statement
things.
To make it,
Yeah.
you know.
So I guess what I'm asking, do people think that if we took away the specific districts that were articulated in the initial document and came out and said that development could occur uniformly or as it occurs naturally in the interior zone, that would satisfy? Do you think that would bring us closer to agreement with the rest of the population?
I think so.
Do you think that?
That was the big concerns of, you two over there for one thing, and make it as vague as possible.
So,
Would,
yeah.
would you want to include the idea that it would be possible to develop multi-family cluster housing anywhere in the, or according to some
It-
criteria.
It's allowed,
It's allowed as it is now.
Yeah,
it's allowed.
It doesn't get done. Well, Hamilton Place, but
Yeah, I mean, Hamilton Place is minimum 20,000 square foot lots, I think, is workforce housing.
so we could include in our land use plan things like that,
yeah.
but you just wouldn't say.
You wouldn't say it has to go
these area
here.
or that area.
It could occur, wherever.
But there would be some criteria that you'd have to meet in order to do it.
But most of these areas are, they're privately owned. You got 123, the Farr family, the Bartons, nothing's gonna happen there.
Yeah, when you really look at it in terms of
Say
con-
that again.
Oh, just that some of the wider stretches of land, say on 123, the Barton family who owns Schofield's farm, the Farr, I think it's still a Farr family down there, they have tons of acreage.
Yeah.
Harpswell Sound. But it's been that way for generations, and I don't see any movement there to do anything different. So, the idea of great housing, like Brunswick, it's just not gonna happen in ours. Frankly, as much as I like my little affordable housing committee, realistically, with the price of land in town and just the way things are, it's just gonna be more and more expensive houses coming here.
So, let me just make sure I have this right. We're saying to kind of let it happen in the interior district only, not the shoreline
No,
district.
the shoreland's got its own,
Right.
its own ordinance.
I think that's a better way to go about it personally. Or a case-by-case basis,
Yeah.
like I mentioned it.
George, you've been uncharacteristically quiet.
I probably had a long day, it was hot out there today, wasn't it?
Any comments?
Not right now, I guess.
Okay. So that would mean taking this element in the plan about specific districts out and making it a generalized approach to say that development can occur in the interior zone. And it could be single-family houses, it could be cluster housing, it could be duplexes or whatever. But that, to me, that there needs to be some kind of guidelines to go along with that in terms of ordinances and so on.
Yeah, I want to speak in favor of guidelines. 10 years is a long time. A lot can happen. And I think just throwing open switching around the acreage numbers according to that, as in that last chart that Judy produced for us, and just saying, oh, well, let's not make it specific. Nobody will worry if we just say the inland area. I think that's opening us up to unintended consequences. I think that we should focus first on guidelines. What is it we're trying to accomplish? Can we be very clear about that? And then I would like the plan, if to the extent that we have clarity on particular zoning changes, that's fine. But I think far more important for the future of this town is for us to think through a mechanism over the next 10 years when these questions can be looked at specifically and changes can be recommended to zoning and so on, and that if we set up a credible, and that means representative, and it means people have to have a lot of access to it, but we need to set up a commission that'll function in the next 10 years to, in fact, interpret the guidelines that we should set up. We should set up guidelines, they can be pretty clear and so on. Then we should just set up a mechanism so that on a year-by-year basis, some commission can really get down and work on this, about the size of this group perhaps, and so on, and make appropriate suggestions to the select board or whoever else has to be done. But we need to have a mechanism which is democratic and legitimate and so on to do the guidelines. That, I would be very happy with that. I think Judy's plan went awry. It was too specific. It just scared the hell out of people. And it didn't scare me, I didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. So.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but we're talking about a 10-year land use plan, and people on the task force don't understand it? how can you put something in front of people and ask them to vote on it if you don't understand what you're asking them to
Very
vote
good
on?
question, and I'm not a stupid person. I honestly don't know if Judy's table was implemented today, what it would, how it would change Harpswell in the next 2 or 3 years.
And
I think
that's-
it's unknowable.
So is
It's
it-
unintended consequences, and therefore, we should set up a mechanism that we can monitor and review. That's much more important to me than thinking that we're going to bring the 10 tablets down from the mountain because we're the task force.
Well, I mean,
Guidelines,
Mechanism.
not commandments.
mechanism number one is the planning board,
Yeah.
which currently exists. But, you know, in the plan, there was a recommendation to have a comprehensive plan implementation committee to look at what kind of progress was being made in these specific areas, and then report to the select board on an annual basis to say, we're making progress here, or there were issues there, whatever the case might be. So, I mean, there was an attempt to do that.
I'm talking about a land use
Well, we-
commission, not monitoring
Okay,
the
so we-
entire plan.
We have a land use ordinance, and that lays out a lot of the specifics about how currently the land is to be developed. Talks about 80,000 square feet for subdivision, 40,000 square feet for single lots outside of things. It talks about all the zoning areas that we have and so on. So we're talking about potentially changing or reinforcing that existing document, which, you know, currently falls under the purview of the planning board that would have to go through the select board and then approved by the town, at town meeting. So,
Well, Al, we had a land use committee back in 2000, 2005, which basically was looking at, I guess, the comprehensive plan that was done at that time with, specifically for land use. And it went for a couple of years until it was disbanded. But, you know, most plans, you do have an implementation of sorts afterwards, and many of the things in the plan would be directed to the particular committee in town that specializes in that. So I'm not sure how that differs from what you were talking about, Bob.
Well, I think we need to identify what that group is. If we want to expand the mandate of an existing group, that would be fine, or create a wholly new one. We just need to identify a process that people feel they have a buy-in. People who are complaining at those public meetings are not going to go away, nor should they go away. They had legitimate concerns, it seems to me, and there needs to be a way to work that out over time.
I mean, getting back to Amy's point about not understanding, I mean, when you go through the document and you look at what was laid out for these specific districts, if we do away with the district approach and take a more generalized approach, a lot of what exists right now kind of goes away, or at least it's reduced to a more,
I do have a question about that, because we were saying that we would just let what is in the interior zone, we wouldn't have special districts, we would just sort of let what's in the interior zone go. And, you know, so that's this table that's on page 27 of the plan. And I just heard people at the meetings, A, not understand this, and B, what they did understand, kind of go,
I didn't like.
I don't really like it. And so if we're, I'm totally confused here about where we're really going.
I think what we're saying is that to eliminate the confusion, we're probably going to eliminate, my understanding is that we would eliminate a lot of those.
So then what will minimum lot size be? Will we just keep the current ordinance? Will we?
Yeah, keep the current ordinance.
Keep the current ordinance, unless and until the town approves something different.
Right.
But in terms of a comprehensive plan, if there's a real, I mean, all of these these, I don't know what you call them, charts or whatever, were really driven by a desire to make possible smaller houses on smaller lots, ultimately. And, you know, I don't fault the consultant or the town planner for trying to force this specificity, but I think what we have right now in existence in terms of the current basic land use ordinance is working. And it's a question of maybe modifying certain parts of it to allow, I do think, editorial comment, I do think that making it possible to put smaller houses on smaller lots is not a bad idea. It's a question of how do you control it in a way that people are not going to be concerned about it. And I think, as Dave was saying, the market, to a large extent, is going to drive that.
And the planning board, the ordinance changes, if
Planning
it comes about, you know, something.
So what?
And it can be done through ordinance changes, you know, if we
Yeah.
just eliminate the land use part of this whole plan, and then anything comes forward, you know, through an ordinance change, through the planning board, through the, you know, planning office. And, but people, you know, everybody was more upset about the zoning on interior zoning than anything else, so we just eliminated. That problem seems to go away, and anything else can just be brought forth, you know, through other means, you know, the ordinance changes, you know, town votes on it. Let's face it, the 2005, everything in there was never implemented. As far as I know, it was, you know, died on the vine.
It was hard. On another note, too, you could have an ordinance change, let's just say, that dropped the size of, well, right now, you, on the interior, can have a 1 acre lot anyhow. You might decide, going forward, 4 or 5 years, that you would like to drop the size of a lot even more because of affordable or doable housing for local people. But you would have the chance to really delve into it and talk to the public about it and put a focus on it and tweak it so that you could then put the ordinance through. Right now, we're trying to do a lot
Up front.
Yeah,
up
exactly.
front, and it's really, I think it's just hard for people to put their head around.
Yep.
So if somebody, say somebody came to the planning board and said, look, I have this 30,000 square foot area that I own, nothing's on it. According to the current ordinance, I couldn't build anything on it, but I want to. And the planning board decides, you know, if you come up with a reasonably sized house, we might let you put that on there. But you then have to,
We couldn't do that.
Couldn't do it.
We couldn't do it,
no, I
Brian.
understand. You then would have to change the ordinance, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and how long does that take?
Until the next
Next town meeting.
town meeting,
Next town meeting.
Town meeting,
And-
so that could be a year away.
Right.
Yeah.
unless somebody has a special town meeting, which would not be done for one particular.
Proliferating.
We're managing to do them every
Ordinance
week, aren't we?
changes have to be
They're
passed
monthly
at town
now.
meeting by the voting members of the town.
Yeah.
We-
Yeah,
we
the
just-
planning board can't change
Then it
something.
seems like either
Neither
we
can the
or
select
the
board.
implementation committee need to be studying enough
Oh, right.
to propose any ordinance changes at the next town meeting.
Well, not with this group.
Pardon?
That's not,
Not with this group.
Yeah.
no.
Well, in March, I mean, next March.
Well, we just did it 2 weeks ago, Saturday. You know, we
Special
did,
town meeting.
yeah, we had 3 ordinance changes, you know. I pretty well attended, actually.
It was very well,
Amazing
Saturday.
attendance.
and very little controversy, great support for the affordable housing provisions.
And we have a number of ordinance changes every year at town meeting. Some are promoted by various committees when you're trying to make a change for a reason. We put a pesticide ordinance in at town meeting. So I think, you know, going forward, when there's an interest for a reason like that, there's a lot of input put in to get the people to understand it.
That's
Yeah.
true.
So I think you have a better chance than of doing that type of thing.
Yeah, this committee's hands off.
I'm sorry.
I said this committee will stay hands off that, you know, and let anything forward, you know, just happen naturally.
Okay, so here's where we are as far as I understand it.
So, let me know.
With respect to rural character, we're going to address that as part of the executive summary upfront as sort of a, I would say, a bedrock
It's a great way to start the plan.
aspect of
Yes,
It is.
what we want Harpswell to be all about.
Yep.
We could put it in item C of the vision elements as Matt.
Well, it just is about a forward.
Yeah,
The first thing we read, before you read the executive summary, you read that paragraph.
The vision
Just a good
statement,
opening.
yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
That's good.
And that sort of highlights, you know, a sort of what I would call, like I said, a bedrock foundational view that we have of the town. And then, with respect to the basic land use plan, strip away get away from the specific districts, make it a more generalized view, and what that would mean would be going along with what we wanted to do with development in the town in general, is that it opens up the interior zone to a variety of different development possibilities that have to adhere to the current ordinances unless the ordinances are changed. And, you know, I mean, you know, maybe at some point in the future, you know, I know I've talked to Amy, she has raised the possibility of increasing the size of lot size. Well, that might be something that the town might agree to in the future. Other people might say, well, we need to do something a little bit different. But all of that would have to be approved and addressed through town meeting. But I think as the future, you know, the comprehensive plan, what we need to do is provide enough of a vision, but to give it some wiggle room to go in one direction or the other. You know, we're not saying that we're no be-all and end-all here, but our current ordinances have been changed and modified multiple times to kind of go with different viewpoints and so on that arise in the town. And I think that's something that we should expect in the future as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a good summary. I would flesh it out a little. I think we have a vision statement, and I hope we don't mess with it, frankly. Vision should be short and to the point, and inspire people. That's all they do. They inspire people and they give us a framework, and they're aspirational. I think we should take it to the next step, and you used the term earlier, of guidelines on the land use issue. And I think we should wrestle with that question of guidelines so that we should, a guideline's a guideline. You know, it's not a rule, it's not a law, it's not a regulation, it's a guideline. But we ought to be very clear, and there should be some very clear guidelines to the extent we have the wisdom to develop them here and think we can put them forward to the town population. So that as people think about ordinance changes over the next 10 years and so on, they go back and refer to those guidelines. And I think those guidelines can begin to meet some of Amy's things. I have a whole different set of guidelines I recommend, but can begin to meet some specific needs. So we're getting closer to specificity, but we're not putting people in a straitjacket.
Okay?
Hey, Terry Ann, your camera's doing some things.
I'm sorry?
Your camera's doing some things.
So maybe what we ought to
It's
do,
winking.
As technical as I get. Good.
Yeah, it's stupid.
It's that new staff person.
Yeah, yeah.
All
I'll blame
right,
it.
could get less technical.
I'm going to break for an advertisement.
okay, in line with Bob's suggestion, maybe what I'd ask people to do is think about some guidelines, bring them forward, send them.
Or maybe if we get them, do what we did, I thought it was very successful at the last meeting, was it? You put that paper
I
up there, and
agree.
we wrote down stuff.
I
right.
agree. I really like that process because then everybody gets to hear what everybody else says. And you
Okay,
get
so
to
then-
say, what does that mean? And why do you think that? And do you think that should be? It should be a group discussion process.
Okay, so next meeting, we'll have the easel. And,
It's right behind the door.
And,
all right.
Can we have
Here,
an easel without a town
Make
planner?
sure we have, you know,
We need a big whiteboard in here.
yeah,
Just right on the wall.
I know, it's tempting.
but everybody
It's a
think
clean
about,
space.
It would be.
think about,
How much is it in the budget to turn the whole wall into a whiteboard?
You know, it's not. Or a big paper.
It's for a screen.
You can get flip charts that
I
have
often
sticky
use
bottoms
it if
that you
they-
could hang up there.
I was told no.
okay, so guidelines for the future land
I
use
was here when
guidelines.
Tony died in '89.
So we'll focus on future land use guidelines for the next meeting.
we haven't, are there business development guidelines?
Don't even go there.
Don't even go there?
Don't even go there.
I
Well, that's,
think
the-
if we-
that's interior zoning. That's interior zoning, because right now,
Yeah.
is that what you mean? I don't know, maybe that's not what you mean, but
Is there
right
all
now,
business?
Just the
anything goes.
development of businesses.
Anything goes in the interior zone. You can put any
Yeah.
business you want, as long as it meets the zoning requirements. You can put in anything. You could
I know,
put a
that's a worry.
McDonald's in.
Is it a worry, but is it really?
You know, who knows, somebody, these nice fields south of the mountain road on 123, somebody says to the owner, you're not living there. I'm gonna give you $5 million for that. Because I'm gonna put in a retirement home.
As long as you can meet the septic requirements
Yeah,
and that you could, it depends on whether you met the density, could meet the density requirements. Right now, that would be really hard to do, given current zoning.
Yeah. Somebody just put up a building in 123, it looks like it's gonna be a Starbucks, doesn't it, in the field?
Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut, it's.
Oh, that's the one with, on the open space that are over, had the beautiful view there?
Yes.
Oh, it's got a great view, but just a horrid house.
That one,
What is that?
You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's the thing, it's like, I've got mine, screw everybody else that has to drive by my house. I've got my view, I can sit and look out the window. I think we can do better than that. I think we should do better than that.
Guidelines, so we're working in some guidelines.
Yeah.
all right, so for our next meeting, which, by the way, is 2 weeks from now, I wrote it down, July 9th.
Is that a-
Let's people think,
is that a Tuesday?
is it 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks.
Jesus.
Oh.
Let's think about guidelines for the future land use that we can talk about. And maybe we can kind of clarify and crystallize some of our thinking on this. Okay, I'd like to bring up another topic at this point, and that is, I think we need to meet with the select board at some point here in the future. Let them know and give them an idea of some things that we're thinking about modifying on the plan. I have some specific thoughts about, I think certain parts of this plan need to be edited a little bit better, tweaked a little bit better. I think, I've talked about this before, I think reorganizing the order of how things are presented in the executive summary, the way it is right now, we open up with housing. And that makes people think like this is the most important thing in Harpswell. Well, it's an important thing, but it's not the most important thing. And so I think by modifying or changing the order of the way things are addressed in here is a way of communicating that we recognize that there are some very important things here, like working waterfront, like natural resources and things like that. Housing is important. But frankly, I think Do you know where the Affordable Housing Working Group final report stands right now?
No.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll find out.
I mean, I was
We're meeting
hoping,
tomorrow.
okay, so I was hoping that that would be done, so we could say, here's what they say, and use that and incorporate that,
Last time I knew, there are arguing over punctuation.
yeah.
Let's
According
invite,
to Jim.
No.
could we invite at least one or
General
two
writer.
people from there to come to our, when we do our guideline workshop,
Sure,
let's invite two of them to throw in with that.
that's great.
Al, just to mention, there's a Board of Appeals meeting in this room on the 9th of July.
Was a what?
Board of Appeals,
What time?
6:30.
What's the topic? What's the issue?
The Board of Appeals,
Yeah.
somebody's,
Field Road.
Somebody's appealing.
Gundy's Harbor, hope you have that appeal.
Oh.
It's on the abutter.
Yeah.
oh, which one? I don't know what it is, I just know.
I know a lot about it, but it's probably, it doesn't need to be discussed at the comp plan task force.
Right.
When is the?
It's interesting.
when is
So
the-
I just thought I'd mention that. We have to
Okay,
find it
what's the
on
date?
July 9th,
Ninth.
Okay, oh.
the same night as our meeting.
Could we meet earlier? Is that possible for you
Well, these guys like the 6 o'clock
Like,
timeline,
Is
but.
it possible
but,
for you?
I mean, obviously, if that's an important issue, they'd want to be in this room.
4 to 6.
Well, they have to be in this room.
Shuttle along.
Matt just said he could do it. I don't know if
Yeah,
you're,
4 to 6 or 5 to 6.
4 o'clock. Say
okay.
instead of meeting at 6, we meet at 4.
Annual
if
meeting
you
of
will.
the Land Trust.
let's try
Yeah.
to plan it.
Well, that's
so
the other
we
thing
can
that's on the night.
Board of Appeals
That's
come
on the
and
night,
then
too.
leave.
Yeah, we want to start at, how about 4?
George, isn't that
Let's,
right in the middle of your nap time?
Yeah, well.
Could we,
You can sleep when you get here.
let's, could we discuss something besides the 9th? Because it's also the annual meeting of the Heritage Land Trust at the schoolhouse.
Go the 10th? We used to meet on Wednesdays.
Actually, yeah, Kellen
Huh?
changed.
Oh,
All right, what's an alternative date that might work for people?
The 8th,
the 8th.
All right,
and then we'll
I'll-
kick somebody else out of here.
Is that a Tuesday?
It's a Monday,
Monday.
Oh, okay, good.
so it's probably.
all right,
Or
I
theater
will,
Tom Lands.
But our theater tickets, it's like a Tuesday or everything.
I'll take a look at,
Look at the.
see if we can
calendar.
work at
Yeah.
alternate date and see if we can make that. And I'll get back to you guys as soon as we sort something out. So it could be the 8th, the 9th, or the 10th.
I will say, we have so many committees now that we drove out the Bridge Club.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
we
you
finally
go.
did. Today was their last day.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, wow.
Some of
Okay.
them were angry, by the way.
You blew it
I
up?
know.
I didn't. They decided to move down the yacht club.
Well, I had to keep,
They could probably
Yes,
have
they
drinks
were
there.
Town
I'm
hall.
not saying they don't hear.
All right, so I'll get back to you guys with the date, specific date for the next meeting, 8th, 9th, or 10th. Probably the 8th or the 10th, given the Board of Appeals meeting. Okay, getting back to the Select Board meeting. I think we need to get with the Select Board to give them an idea of the changes that we're contemplating to this report, for a couple of reasons.
All the changes. So,
Well, yeah, because we
everything we come
need,
up with
we need to
between now
give
and
the
then.
Select Board an idea of the level of effort it's gonna take to make this, to make the changes that we envision right now. And whether or not we need to bring the consultant back on board to help us with specific areas, because this is not a free lunch with, I mean, it's gonna cost the town to bring them back on board. And so we need to be cognizant of specifically what we think we need them to do, so that they can make some decisions about whether or not they're gonna support it.
When are we gonna hire a new planner?
We interviewed one today.
You did, okay. So is it possible that the new planner could help do this?
It won't be till like middle of July, if he accepts the offer.
It may resign.
But
It would be great if the new planner could get somehow involved, even though we're sort of at the tail end of this thing. I think it would be great.
Minimum, my experience in these sort of things is minimum, we're gonna need professional help to copy edit this thing.
Yeah.
We're gonna need professional help to lay it out graphically
Yeah.
and so on. So
That's
that's
true.
minimum.
That's true.
And Judy and her team can do that,
That's
for sure.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think we should try as hard as possible to get by without them. If the need arises, we should scream
Yeah.
and holler, but I would say let's try to keep it to that. It's still gonna be an expense, but
Yeah.
I have,
It'll be a lot less
Yeah.
than what we projected.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
already had 3 or 4 meetings, and we're getting things done, all of the interior, thoughts that we all have. We're getting to do it without paying somebody to sit over there and wait for us to finish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the things that you recommended, I think is
We need to
something
do
that
here.
they could help us with.
and I assume, the way the contract's written, they're gonna be, they're supplying the final plan at the end,
Yes.
and that's covered. So this would all be extra, so the more we
Yeah.
can do.
What do we do in the meantime?
Yeah.
I think we can get it, narrowed down. We're getting closer.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
we are.
Al?
Yeah. Sure.
So, about the overall plan, a comment that I got several times from people that actually sat down and read the plan, printed it off, or whatnot, there's a lot of repeats. One person said to me, I'm on page 20 and I've got the same data 3 times.
Yeah.
There's data included in the paragraphs. That's one thing I really liked about Amy's rural character statement, was there's no data, it's just words.
Yeah.
And then, so if some of those, it could be simplified, I think is what people are trying to say. I don't have the plan right in front of me, so I can't give you a prime example, but I know that you guys have read it, so I know you think it's the same thing. One of the ones that comes to mind was the median house cost. It's listed 2 or 3 times, in the forefront of the plan. And then when you get to the charts, like we were talking about, it's on there again, or the same data. So maybe if we could simplify or take out some of that data in these paragraphs, it not only would shorten the plan, but it would simplify it some.
Get it to
Maybe.
3/4 of an inch instead of-
And the data's the scary part, right? When you read it, they're like, whoa. Let them read it when they get to the chart, or do away with the chart, like you said, and leave the
All right.
paragraph, so.
I think those are good ideas and so on. I think
Yeah.
that's great. Here's kind of big picture what I was thinking about for the next several months. I think we ought to try to finish all this stuff by October, November timeframe. I mean, that may sound ambitious, and the reason I say October, November timeframe is because I would like to sort of submit what we come up with to the state, to let them give a quick review and say, have we met what you folks think is the requirements for a comprehensive plan? And then get feedback from them, have a town meeting with folks, final town meeting before the March town meeting, a community meeting, say, here's what we've come up with, and try to summarize that as best we can, and get there, try to prime the pump, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, if by then we're talking with one voice, then it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. Okay, and hopefully we will.
Big if.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, hey, there's a lot of controversy, lots of issues, lots of different opinions. Gotta try to do the best we can. And I think we're honing in on something that I think will be more palatable to the people in the community. And so that's kind of big picture, the way I see things lining up. We don't have to have a ton of meetings between now and then. We've had a lot of meetings with different parts of the community, but I think it's important to meet at least once more, community-wide, town-wide meeting before we get to the March vote, so that we can be assured that people are pretty much on track with what we have.
be good if we could have some sort of a chart that said, this is what you asked for,
Yeah.
these are the changes we made, this is how it reads.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
Okay,
then,
good idea.
and then you get people on board.
And the other thing I
That's
think,
very important.
yeah,
Let's not lose sight of that
I
chart.
don't wanna do all this and then have it not pass. The
Yeah.
goal is for this to pass.
Yeah.
yeah.
We hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And it
Make the
may be,
changes.
yeah, I think that's a great
And
suggestion.
prove, and say, it's on this page, you asked for this, it's on this page, that's the change.
now, the other thing, just to remind you of, over the next several months, I've talked to the Harpswell anchor, and what I tried to do, I'm trying to do, is encapsulate portions of the plan and put them out in the anchor in the next several months. Now, obviously, if things are changing, that's gonna be hard to do, but what I'm thinking is the future land use part of it, which is the important part ultimately, would be the last thing that we would submit. In the next anchor, there were several topics that I've pulled out of the plan to try to summarize, and these are fairly non-controversial things to start with. And then we'll try to get something that's gonna be in the July edition, the August edition, September edition. Maybe by that time, we'll have refined the land use plan, and we can talk about that. So that's another way to kind of break it up into pieces, which guys have commented on, and say, here are slices of the plan to help you understand the entire thing. So that's kind of, those are the bits and pieces that I've sort of been thinking about for the next several months.
Just a question to think about. We did promise people that we'd come back, and I know, the time is short, but wonder if folks think it might behoove us to have 3 more meetings,
You mean this community meetings?
community meetings, just at Cundy's Harbor, Orrs Bailey's, and on the Neck, and just present the chart that George suggested and say, we heard you, these are the changes we've made.
In the fall?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not now.
Yeah.
After we've made the changes,
To figure out what the
before we
changes
go to the
are.
state. Good idea.
That's fine.
And we do have the non-resident taxpayers coming up in July. that
Right.
You can give a short,
Yeah, I'll give a short blurb on
Yeah.
where we are.
they're always a happy bunch, I want to keep them that way.
Exactly.
You should be happy.
All right, I want to say one thing personally. I appreciate, this has been going on for 2.5 years or more. I want to appreciate you guys hanging in there, because it's not an easy thing to do with everything else that's going on, stuff like that. And, there's a little bit of cynicism that says, hey, yeah, we've done this stuff, and then all of a sudden it goes away. But I'm more optimistic, I am optimistic that some of this is gonna be implemented. If we can get parts of this to be implemented into the future, I think we'll be better for it as a community. And I think we can stand back and say, hey, we added something to the future. So, but again, I wanted to thank you. It's not been an easy process. It's been a learning experience for me, for sure. And I just want to thank everybody for hanging in there. We're getting close to the finish line, so.
Okay,
Thank you all.
Coach.
All right,
Any other comments, questions, or issues?
bring them next week.
Yeah, if not, this meeting's adjourned.